Today we are going to study a Victorian novel, Jane Eyre, written by Charlotte Bronte. Here is the picture of the writer, Charlotte Bronte. She was born on 21st April 1816. She passed away on 31st March 1855. She studied at Clergy Daughter School at Cornbridge, which she portrayed in the novel Jane Eyre as Lord School. After that, she studied at home. She worked as a teacher at Miss Wooler School during 1835-38. Later, she became a governess in 1842. The same year her aunt passed away. She went to Brussels to study languages. She worked there as a teacher. She fell deeply in love with Mr. Hager, who did not respond her favorably. Later on, she started to compose poetry and she wrote many novels. The first novel that appeared in 1847, that is Jenny Eyre, that is the masterpiece ever written by the writer. Late 1858, The Professor appeared in 1857, The Green Dwarf appeared in 1833. In this novel, we also see there are some Gothic elements in the novel, and later on she married to a person and and her name is known as Mrs. Arthur Bell Nicholas. Here is the plan of the novel. In what manner the novel is constructed. It is written in the first person. There are 38 chapters. There are 5 different stages of the novel. First, we see the journey childhood at Gateshead, where she is emotionally and physically abused by her aunt and the cousins. Later on, she moved for education at Lord School, where she acquired friends and sad experiences. She becomes a governess and she moved to Thornsfield, where she falls in love with the master Rochester. And her marriage is not materialized. She comes to the Rivers family, where Saint John proposes her for marriage, and finally she unites with Rochester. There are major characters in the novel. First of all, we'll discuss the protagonist of the novel, Jane Eyre, and it is the title of the novel. So, in what manner the Jane Eyre passes through the different stages, and at Gateshead, she is not treated well. She is living with her maternal uncle family, the Reeds. Jenny's parents died of typhus. Jenny's aunt Sarah Reed does not like her, treats her worse than a servant, and discourages at times forbids her children for associating with her. She claims that Jenny is not worthy of the notice. Uh, she and her 3 children abuses her physically and emotionally. She is unaccepted in the family. One day, Jenny is locked in the red room where uncle died, and panic after seeing vision of him. She finally rescued when she is allowed to attend Lowood School for Girls. Before she leaves that house, she stands up to Mrs. Reed and declares that she will never call her aunt again. That should tell everyone at Lord how cool Mrs. Reed was to her, and says that Mrs. Reed and her daughter Georgian were deeply deceitful. She arrives at Lord Institution, where she meets Blockerhurst, who is the head of the institution. She declares openly that she is deceitful. During an inspection, Jenny accidentally breaks her slate, and Mr. Brockhurst uh, runs to the school and brands as a liar and shames her before the entire assembly. At that time, Jenny is comforted by her friend Helen Burns, Miss Temple, and she, in what manner Jenny is publicly declared of Mr. Uh, Colchester accusation. And after 6 years as a teacher, she moves to uh, Thornsfield, where she becomes the governess of governance of Rochester's child. One day happens what happens. She takes the position. She starts teaching Adela once, a young French girl, while Jane is walking one night to a nearby town. Horseman passes there. The horse slips on the ice and throws the river. Rider. She helps him to the horse. Later on, back to the mansion, she learns that the person was Rochester, the master of the house. He teases her, asking whether she bewitched the horse and to make him fall. And odd things happen at the house. A mysterious fire in the Mr. Rochester room, on which Jenny throws water. An attack on Rochester's house guest, Mr. Manson. Jen receives word that her aunt was calling for after being a much grief because her son has died. She returns to Gateshead and remains there for a month, caring for her dying aunt. Mrs. Reed gives her Jenny a letter from Jenny's parental uncle, Mr. John Eyre, asking her to live with him. Now she returns to again Thornsfield. She comes to know about the marriage of Blanche Graham with Rochester, but that marriage fails. And later on, we see that Jenny Eyre falls in love with Rochester and she prepares for her wedding. And one night she happens to see that there is a ghost that towards the bride dress of Jenny. And on the marriage day, she comes to know that Rochester could not marry because he has legally Bertha as his wife, and she runs away from there. And see in what manner Jenny suffers from this age to that stage. She comes in contact with Mr. Rivers' family, and where she reaches there, and see what manner she lives with the Rivers family. There is Saint John is there. Saint John proposes her for marriage. She refuses because Saint John was not a person of her liking, and uh, Saint John uh, gives her an experimental kiss where all the time she expected Rochester's there, and by chance he hears a call from her inner side. She says that she believes that her master is calling her. She reaches to the Thornsfield. She finds that that house is completely deserted. She inquires about the condition of Rochester. She comes to know that Rochester has moved from there. She reaches to Whitcross, and after reaching to Whitcross, she happens to see the new house of Mr. Rochester. She in what manner she walks alone. She reaches to that house. Rochester was blind, but he could recognize that she was Jenny Eyre. And at that time, Jenny Eyre declares her love for Rochester, and they married together. And after marriage, Rochester was able to see his newborn baby. See in what manner the story of Jenny Eyre comes from this, begins from this Gateshead to that is the Moor House. And we can also see in what manner there are other characters. But we see, I have taken certain pictures. Moor House is the house of Rivers family. Before reaching to the Moor House, she passed a desolate night in the forest, and she was alone. She was considered that she is an outcast, but reaches there, and that is the condition of Jenny Eyre before reaching to Moor House. Now, that is the fine picture which I have taken. That's as and when she goes back to Rochester Manor House, see in what manner she faces the difficulties of nature. And you see, she reaches to that place and she happens to see the building, the place where her master was living. She thinks that her master is calling her and she reaches there and she accepts him as her husband, as her life mate. There are other characters of the novel. Mrs. Reed is there. She is Jenny's maternal uncle. And Mrs. Shah Reed is the wife of Mr. Reed. And she does not behave properly with Jenny Eyre. Even her children does not treat her in a better position. John Reed is a Jenny's cousin. He beats her, and he does not behave properly. One day she is closed in the red room where her father, where his uncle passed away. She was a child. She afraid. She reaches to the Lord School where she meets Brocklehurst, who is the clergyman, who is the headmaster, who is the treasurer of the Lord School. He declares that Jenny is not a good girl. She regrets. Later on she moves to Thornsfield, where she meets Rochester. Rochester is the master of that house. Here, Jenny falls in love with Rochester, but she could not marry on the legal grounds. She leaves that Thornsfield and she reaches to the Rivers family, where she meets Saint John. Saint John proposes her, but she rejects. She hears a call from masters, and we also meet Bertha. Bertha is the insane wife of Rochester. Now there are important places in the novel, and the first important place is Gateshead, where Jenny Eyre starts her life with Reed's family, where she suffers emotionally and physically. She's beaten, she's locked. Now she moves to the Lord School, where she gets education. It is an orphan school, and she gets experience here. She moves to Thornsfield Hall, that is the place of Rochester. You see, that is the new house, that is Morton is also there, where St. John was doing as a parson, as a priest. Moor House, that is the parental house of Rivers. Whitcross is the uninhabited place. And Manor House, the new house of Rochester. In this manner we see the novel moves, and the next lecture we will discuss the theme of the novel. Thanks.